I continue my exegesis of Hegel's logic. I conclude that if you start watching this video, you have watched all the other videos in the playlist Hyperborea, because this lecture, if one might speak of a lecture, is only intelligible if you have gone through all the previous intellectual steps. If you take this video at random and you stumble upon it, it will be completely unintelligible, because I'm a Hegelian, and the movement of Hegel's philosophy consists in grasping the whole in its self-unfolding development. So if you just take one part, you won't understand anything. It says that in everything that the mind perceives in the broadest sense, the psyche, if you will, everything interior representation, everything that the mind makes its own, my ideas, my representation, the images that I have in my mind, my memories, my desires, my feelings, my emotions, we are not conscious of it, but in every affection of our individuality, there are logical categories which are hidden. For instance, if I am hungry, I have a desire. A desire is the presence of an absence, or the absence of a presence. It is a unity of being and nothing, and we are moved by desire, and if we had no desire, we would be immovable. That's the Buddhist nirvana. And desire is the nothingness, the inner nothing, which force me and force the world to move. Men move and are constantly on the move because they constantly desire, they constantly feel a nothing within their being. And the presence of nothing within being is the beginning of Hegel's logic, and that is that which brings about the entire logical development. And he says that the logical aspect is the very nature of man. But so the nature of man is that which characterizes, that which gives man his specificity in comparison with the rest of the natural world. So the nature of man, the concept of man, the fundamental determination of man, the truth of man is logic. So it is the nature of man, but it is also the supernatural. It is that which goes beyond and above nature. And supernatural, it sounds like, oh, it's magical. But supernatural is the Latin equivalent of metaphysical. And people have this bias that metaphysics is a realm of boring abstractions. So on the one hand, you have those boring metaphysicians from Plato to Kant and Hegel and Leibniz and Descartes and Spinoza. And on the other hand, you have the supernatural. Oh, that's magic, that's extraordinary, that's wonderful. Science fiction, novels, stories, fictional stories, magic. But the supernatural and the metaphysical are one. The purpose is to grasp the metaphysical, in a classical sense of logical determinations, of the supernatural, but they are one. So yeah, Hegel says that it's an advantage. It's advantageous for a language to have a wealth of logical expressions, determinations of thought, to possess determinations of thought which are set and left and which lie in the propositions and articles and the relationship of one another. And Bertrand Russell, in some of his writings, he said that the problem with classical metaphysics is that it uses too many substantive. For instance, instead of talking about beautiful things, the metaphysician will talk about beauty in itself. It will substantiate or substantivate, I don't know how to say it in English, the idea of beauty, or the good. Instead of talking about the many good things, it will essentialize, substantialize, conceptualize the good. And the same with verbs. And Bertrand Russell said that the metaphysicians are deluding themselves by imagining fictional entities which are just imprinted in the language, so that language is a delusion. And he said that we should make more, that's Bertrand Russell, that we should take a more careful attention to the preposition and the articles, which are the connections between the words instead of the verbs and the substantive. And Hegel says the exact opposite, but that's logical because Russell was the opposite of Hegel, because all post-Hegelian philosophers try to refute Hegel. But Hegel said that it's an advantage, it's a good thing for a language to be able to substantivate, to transform the adjectives into nouns, into yeah. And he says that the German language possesses the great quality, the great advantage of being able to unite together opposed determinations. And this is the sign of spirit, to be able to conceptually grasp opposite determinations in their unity. An Aufhebung, everyone who is vaguely familiar with Hegel has heard about the word Aufhebung. It contains within itself, as an expression, the idea of negation and preserve, and to negate and to preserve at the same time. And it's a dialectical word which only exists in German, and that's why it's sometimes translated as sublation, to sublate in English, but it's better to keep the original word. And an anecdote: my German is not very good. I don't speak very well German, but I've read The Science of Logic partly in French, in English, but I feel more at home in the German original writings, even though my technical ability in German is limited. I'm much more fluid in English and in French, but I understand much better when I read the original language in which it was written. It's easier, if you have the basics of German, to read Hegel in the native tongue of the book. And it's true of Latin. I don't speak very well Latin, not at all, but I need, when I read Latin text, to have the translation, the original text and the translation, because sometimes the original text enables you to grasp the true meaning, and to translate is to betray. There's a Spanish expression which says traduco. I don't know why, but the idea, it's a play with words in Spanish, which said that to translate means to betray. And the Arabs, they understand that, because they say that in order to understand the Quran, you have to read in the original Arabic version, and there's a deep truth in it. So yeah. And he says that the reunion, the conceptual grasping of the opposites in their unity, which is the result of speculative thinking, seems absurd and nonsensical for their understanding. So Hegel's philosophy is nonsensical, absurd, and completely stupid even for those who are not trained to see the unity of opposite determinations. And the more you are trained to understand Hegel's thought, the more you see reason in what appeared before you had been initiated nonsensical. So yeah. A progress of culture and of the sciences, whether they are empirical or sensuous, is to progress in a science, one must become acquainted with, familiar with, the categories that the sciences use. And those who are used to reading books, the more theoretical the book is, the more you will constantly stumble upon the same categories, a whole and its parts, particular and universal, force and exteriorization in physics, most notably, identity and difference, the concept, essence and existence. So in all fields, in economics, in physics, in psychology, the more you go into the abstract level, the more you stumble upon the categories, because they are the fundamental stuff of thought. And the more you exert a thinking activity upon any topic, upon any subject, the more you are forced to use these primordial, essential categories. And all the the scientists and the thinkers and the intellectuals, they use a metaphysics unconsciously. They all presuppose that essence has a meaning, that being has a meaning, identity, different, concept, universal, but they do not reflect upon their own presuppositions. So, yeah. And then he talks about the thought determination of force. In physics, the notion of force, it is invisible. We don't see the fundamental forces of physics. We see their manifestation. But Hegel says that it is in the concept of a force to manifest itself, so that the four forces of physics appear to us in their manifestation, and they are nothing other than the manifestation of themselves. But it's a category which is used in physics. The electromagnetic force, the weak interaction, strong interaction, and gravity. It's not really a force, it's the curvature of space-time or whatever. But it is the challenge of modern physics in the 21st century is to unify all the forces into one singular force. And they won't succeed until they grasp Hegel's logic, but that's another question. And he says that the category of polarity is much more speculative, much more rational than the simple category of force, because in the category of polarity, the opposites are in an essential unity with one another. The north is the north only in relation to the south. The west is the west only in relation to the east. And to make an example, a man is a man only in relation to a woman, and the rise of feminism coincide with the decadence of Western men, and the rise of intelligent, attractive women in the alt-right or far-right sphere on the internet coincide with the rise and the emergence of intelligent, strong, and motivated men in the same circle. It's a polarity. Man and woman exist in a conceptual unity, and it's magnetic. A man with charisma will magnetically attract a woman, the woman to which he's magnetically tied in a way. And the same goes for women. An attractive woman will magnetically attract the kind of man that she is in polarity with, so to speak. So, yeah. And another example, danger and threat magnetically attract the will to preserve and to save. And at this moment, in the geopolitical situation of crisis and tension and war, there are heroes, popular heroes emerging. Villains and heroes are in a magnetic unity with one another. That's Hegelian logic. So, yeah, I will stop there for now, and that was just an exemplification, and